The buffalo is strong enough and agile enough to remove the logs without the need to build a road. And that means there's very little damage to the surrounding forest. Regeneration can then take place in a matter of months instead of years. This approach of small-scale forestry and adopting a long-term view hasn't been easy to sell to many of the locals.
People at the beginning didn't like the organisation, but little by little we've won them over. So much so that those people who didn't want anything to do with us are now working with us.
The conservation work doesn't stop there. The timber is being used to build a lodge from which tourists can visit the forest.
By combining ecotourism with wood management, we avoid depending on only one resource. In this way, we can gain from both activities without damaging or cutting down the forest, and we can use the lodge as a way of protecting the forest.
As people like Guillermo have shown, it is possible to make a living from the rainforest without chopping it all down. But at the moment, they are in the minority. People around the world must adopt the same approach if the rainforests are to be saved. This is the Sonoran Desert, a vast empty space in the southwest of the USA. For many years, the area was considered virtually uninhabitable, but not anymore. Huge farms have sprung up, and over 3 million people live in the desert cities of Phoenix and Tucson. This transformation has only been achieved by finding water, lots of water. But this replumbing may have changed the nature of the desert completely. By definition, water is scarce in a desert, but the Sonoran Desert does have some rivers running through it. They exist because they start in areas that have high rainfall. And rivers like the Salt River were the first features that cities like Phoenix exploited to guarantee their water supply.
This is one of the main sources of water for Phoenix. It's Lake Saguaro, one of the man-made lakes that takes water from the Salt River and delivers it to the city. But these lakes only account for half of the city's demand. Most of the rest of it comes from down here.
Deep underground, huge aquifers have built up, and for thousands of years they've sat undisturbed. But throughout the last century, hundreds of wells have been drilled as more and more people have moved to the desert. Because the water has been pumped out faster than it has been replenished, the water table across much of the desert has dropped by nearly 3 meters a year in some places, and it's still dropping today.
As the water table drops, all sorts of problems start to appear. To begin with, pumping out groundwater becomes more and more expensive. And secondly, the quality of the water gets steadily worse.
And in the long term, it's not sustainable. This hasn't deterred people from moving to the desert. Throughout the 1970s and 80s, people came to places like Arizona in droves. With good weather and lots of work available, this was the USA at its newest. In the space of 20 years, the population of the state doubled from 1.8 to 3.6 million people. To accommodate this massive influx, thousands of new houses were built, and most of them included fancy water features in an effort to make the surroundings more attractive. It wasn't just houses and offices that were built. All sorts of other facilities were demanded by the desert's new inhabitants, and all of them needed water. But by the late 1980s, water supplies in Arizona were almost completely taken up. There wasn't any more water to go round.
faced with an ever-increasing demand for water and only a limited supply, there are only really two options. You can either cut consumption drastically, or you can find more water. No prizes for guessing what they did here.
They found more water. And this is where they found it: the Colorado River. It runs 2,300 kilometers from the Rocky Mountains to the Gulf of California in Mexico. The Colorado was already supplying cities in California and Nevada with water, but the engineers calculated there was still enough water to meet Arizona's extra needs. But transporting it from the river to the cities would be no easy task. This is how they did it. The Central Arizona Project, or CAP, a network of canals that delivers Colorado River water to the cities of Phoenix and Tucson. The whole system is controlled from a bunker on the outskirts of Phoenix. From here, they can monitor the passage of water through the system's 14 pumping stations and the 500 kilometers of canal. At a cost of $4 billion, it was an expensive solution to the problem. But with a new source of water, the cities of Arizona could continue to grow. More housing estates were built as ever more people came to soak up the desert sunshine.
And what self-respecting housing estate could do without this? Its very own artificial lake.
The people of Arizona have made some efforts to cut their consumption. Farms are being closed down so their water can be used in the cities. Effluent or treated wastewater is being used for jobs that don't need a high level of purity. And any spare CAP water is being sent underground to try and stock up the aquifers. But the situation will soon get worse rather than better.
At the moment, the CAP delivers more water than Arizona can use. But within a few years, all of this water will be taken up to supply the ever-increasing demands of the cities.
In the meantime, the water table has continued to drop, with disastrous consequences. The US Geological Survey has discovered that large areas of Arizona are literally sinking into the ground. As water is pumped out, the dry rock left behind compacts and the surface sinks. These long cracks are the result.
This fissure's over 200 metres long and as deep as 5 metres. It's been formed as this whole region behind me has subsided. As the ground has sunk down, the surface has been stretched. But this kind of soil doesn't stretch very well, and that results in these great tears in the earth.
It's estimated that an area almost the size of North Yorkshire has subsided. And that's not the only problem. Many of the desert's rivers have now simply dried up. It's not just the water that has gone. Many riverside habitats have disappeared, and with them, the wildlife that lived there.
Until recently, nobody really bothered about that. But now, environmentalists are making use of the Endangered Species Act, a US act designed to protect wildlife. They're using it to prevent developers building new estates, which would need more water and destroy more habitats. And they're having some success.
With rivers like this becoming rarer and rarer, many species have been pushed to the point of extinction. By using the Endangered Species Act, environmentalists have managed to stop some developments going ahead. But if the water supplies are stretched much further, it won't just be the animals that are disappearing. It'll be humans too. It's not impossible. Towns have died before.
This town was founded around a valuable resource, gold. But for people living in the desert, water is just as precious.
Sooner or later, whether pressured by environmental concerns or otherwise, the people of Arizona will have to balance the amount of water they take out with the amount of water they put back. If not, the newest parts of the USA may turn into the ghost towns of the future.